What's up, listeners? It's Andrea. Today, Worf is one crafty MacGyver. He teaches us Klingon Yahtzee. And we ask the question, how many more times can we crap on Aquiel? Stay with us.
Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the #1 place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm your co-host, Shereese.
Hey, I'm your co-host, Andrea. Today we're talking Season 6, Episode 17, Birthright, Part 2. This episode was written by Renee Echevarria and directed by Dan Curry. This is Dan Curry's first time directing a TNG episode. I don't know if it was his first time directing of all time, but the name
Probably
might sound
not.
familiar. Maybe not, but the name may sound familiar because he is the special effects wizard behind all of TNG, like practical effects.
Oh,
So
really?
he was the prop master for all of like TNG as far like up to this point, as far as I know. But he's the one who made like the silkworm and the transporter and all that. Like he does all the creature everything, and he's so cool. So when I saw it was directed by Dan Curry, I was like, I love a new director because it could give us like a new
perspective.
new perspective, right?
Mhm.
But also, I really, really love that. From what I've seen, like Star Trek in particular seems to be really all about like promoting from within. So like you're working on special effects, but you want to try directing, like we'll give you an episode. Sure. Like I really love that. I really, really love that.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. Like I don't, since you and I are not in the business, at least we're not at the point of this recording.
Yeah.
We don't know how these things work, but
Maybe one day. Yeah.
yeah, but who knows? Maybe it's always like this. But I love that also because the people who are in the family, as you put it, know the vibe. Like they know
Yes.
what Trek is supposed to look like and feel like. They know these characters. I was actually reading, we had a guest recently who was mentioning reading some of the Star Trek fanfic books.
Yes.
So I picked up a couple of the books and I was reading through them, and one of these books was written one of these books was written I think after season 1 of TNG. And I was reading it and I was not in love with it because the characters were not the characters I know and love. Like the consistency was not. They have the same names and they look the same, but the things that they would say and the ways that they would behave were not consistent with the characters I know, which makes sense if you wrote a book based off of the season 1 characters.
Yes.
Right? If you wrote
where
a
like
book,
Deanna is totally different as a person.
Everyone
like,
is totally different.
Yeah,
Picard is so stiff and like he's not this like really suave diplomat that we get later. You know, there's just so much development of the characters. But if you were to write that same book after season 7, it's going to be totally different, right? Because
Totally
you have so much
different,
of their vibe. Well, all that to say, if this prop master has been around since the silkworm and the transporter, you know, he's been around all this time.
Yeah, totally.
He knows the vibe, and he did a great job because this episode was very Trek, like was very in the world. But, you know, just jumping into my initial thoughts,
Yes.
it was so good. Like, this is my favorite Worf episode on TNG, hands down. So I was super excited to get into this one.
Oh, no, you know what? This is a really, really good Worf episode. I mean, it's really only Worf. Like, we see the rest of the cast just for a minute to be like, Worf didn't show up to his, like, the rendezvous point. Okay, let's go find out what's wrong. You know, but that's basically it. Like, it's really just Worf. And it does kind of close the loop on the whole Kittimer Moog thing, right? Like, which was teased out a bunch, you know, during,
which I feel like I didn't even need closure on it until I saw this episode. And then I'm like, oh, there was more to that story.
Yes,
okay.
That's what I was going to say. Like, it felt like kind of a close story, like, you know, with the ascension of like, you know, Duras and all that, to find out that like Worf's father didn't betray the Klingons. It was Duras's father who betrayed the Klingons. And yeah, I thought that was like the end of it. But like, I love that it gives us a little bit more depth. It gives us a where are they now that we didn't even know like we needed.
Yep.
There isn't like my initial thoughts were, I don't really remember much of this episode other than Worf is in this prison camp getting like in touch with his Klingon side, and he's wearing this really cool all black ensemble that I defy anyone to find a problem with. Well, except that in several long shots you see that it is just like a onesie, which I was like, why couldn't this just be pants and like a shirt? But whatever, like beyond that, like he looks really cool. I'm like, Worf, wear more all black. You look really cool. Really cool. So one of the first things I noticed is that this is a part 2 episode, right? So Birthright part 1 was more about Data with his dream program and like learning to access that and kind of getting in touch with his father.
Yeah, and visiting Deep Space Nine just to see how cool that set looks, but not for no other reason.
For literally no other reason, right? So I love that it says
last time on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
And the recap is only about Worf's journey because even Star Trek doesn't care about Data's stupid dream program. Like, they didn't show one scene from last week's episode that had anything to do with anything remotely Data related.
Yes, because we're not going to
even
conclude
Star
that
Trek does not
storyline
care.
here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which I was like, oh, are we going to see more of that? I really hope not. And we don't. So I'm like, yay!
I didn't notice that because I skipped the recap. So that's funny. Like I skipped the recaps. I skipped the, intro music.
I usually do too, but this one I was like, I'm just kind of curious to see how because Worf's story and Data's story are both about their fathers, but totally different other than that, right? So it's like, how would they sort of blend this together? And they don't. They're like, cut it. It just got left on the cutting room floor. Which
we can all agree was for the best. What I did notice, which was super interesting, is starting in this episode, they literally picked up at the same second that they finished the last episode, which they never do. Whenever they do a conclusion, it's like another scene. It's another scene in another location.
With the exception of Best of Both Worlds, where Riker says, "Mr. Worf, fire." Yeah, the Locutus one.
Which and then we needed that to be that exact moment. They actually had to rewind for that one. When part 2 came on, it rewound to Mr. Worf, fire.
Yes,
because we had to see what's going to happen. But usually on a part 2, they just that happened and they just pick up at the next scene, what happens after that.
Yeah, whatever comes next.
But this picked up the very next sentence, which I thought was really cool because you could tell they just kept filming. They didn't leave and come back, which was great.
Right. So where we left Worf last week, he had broken into the Klingon prison camp, or I guess it's the Romulan prison camp that's holding Klingons. Yeah. And he jumps over the wall and he sees some Klingons and they're like, you shouldn't have come, and this old Klingon is like, your father's not here. He's dead. He died at Kittimer. We're what's left of the Kittimer massacre. And as you can see from the next number of scenes, there's only 15 people there. So it's very small, but he's like, you shouldn't have come and it's too late for you to turn back now. And Romulans show up with disruptors and point their guns at him. And they're like, okay, now you're a prisoner here. Congratulations. And that's it. It's like, dun, 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 So we kind of get this nice little background. So there's these 2 elder Klingons that tell the story of how the Klingons were captured.
And now this is in this week's episode. So this now is this week's episode. Up what the heck is going on? Worf is being disarmed from his... Did he even have a weapon? His one weapon, if he had one? They just take his backpack off. I don't even know if he had a weapon. They just take his backpack from him, which probably just had rations and
some water and Klingon snacks. Yeah, jerky
and there's
sticks.
Some Romulans at the door with their disruptors, and the Klingons are just kind of telling him what's up while he stands there bewildered as to why they're not trying to leave and they're trying to capture him.
Yes, he's like, how did you get here? What is going on? Why haven't you tried to escape? And so he learns that on Kittimer, their deflector shields were taken out and they were knocked unconscious due to the explosions during the Kittimer massacre. And when they awoke in the prison camp, they were like, okay, now we have to kill ourselves. We have to go on starvation and kill ourselves through starvation. But the Romulans, I guess, must have done some sort of force feeding or tube feeding or something to keep them alive. So after interrogation,
and they did that because warriors like the Klingons do not become captives.
Yes,
that's their code of honor. We would kill ourselves before we just stay as a prisoner, which actually makes all the sense in the world. As thinking about Klingons, you're like, yep, that tracks. That is something they would do. They'd be like, well, I'm not going to be a prisoner. Are you crazy? No,
absolutely not. Right. So they were interrogated by the Romulans and who tried to trade them for territory. But the Klingon Empire refused to accept that their warriors would have allowed themselves to be captured because of the dishonor. So this main Romulan, Tokath, offered to let them go, and they didn't wish to return to Klingon because that would bring dishonor in their family. Yeah.
And as we learned last episode, it would bring dishonor for 3 generations.
Which I love the math on that. Who decided 3 instead of 2 or 5? But okay, 3.
Well, because 3, to me, at least if they live as long as humans do, that's the amount of time that you would be able to still see your
I guess that's true. That's
your 4th generation, you probably wouldn't see. But you would have basically you'd bring enough dishonor to see it for your entire lifetime. It'd be dishonor for your whole lifetime.
Yes,
which is cruel and unusual punishment. That sucks.
It really is.
Yeah. So Tokath said you guys can go, and they were like, "Go where? We can't go home because we are not going to bring dishonor on our families. So we'll just stay here. We'll just stay in the prisons and just stay as our with ourselves." And then we find out that this is what we find out later, but it makes more sense to say it now for our benefit. Is that we discover that Tokath told the Romulan high command This is what they want to do. We can release them, but they don't want to go home. They want to stay here. Can they stay? And he was told that if they don't want to go home, kill them all. Yes. If they're going to stay and stay alive, you have to stay and babysit them. And so Tokath decided, fine, I will stay, give up my career, give up my home on Romulus, never see my family again.
Right.
And stay on this prison camp, which is crazy. Like the whole story, you're just like, oh my gosh, it's like no good choices.
This is no good choices. Yeah, it is no good choices, and it is war. And so yeah, he Tokath took pity on them and like built this camp. And so yeah, the Klingons had like all of their honor was gone, and so they had nothing left to lose just by staying like in this camp. Now we do get this cool exterior shot of the prison camp, and it's like a white complex of buildings surrounded by extremely lush jungle in every direction. And I was like, I would 100% book this Airbnb for my next vacation because it looks gorgeous.
It's the most comfortable prison I've ever seen. Prison camp.
Yeah,
like, they have
like,
other
wow.
prisons on the show, and they have other prisons in the Trek universe in general. But this place is great. Like Worf's quarters, those were legit. Like that was bigger than my room. So
I was like, wow, okay. Now the main kind of storyline of this entire operation is that Worf sees these, I'm going to say domesticated Klingons. Like all of their like warrior spirit is like not there. You have the older generation who was at Khitomer and who were taken prisoner, but they've obviously like kind of like settled in this camp and like had families. So there's like a bunch of like 15-year-old
Klingons.
They've
given up their Klingon-ness. They've given up being warriors because they were like, we died the day we were captured. Yeah, we weren't allowed to kill ourselves. We were basically ghosts. They've literally taken all their armor, weapons, everything that made them Klingon, put them in boxes and put those boxes away. Like, we are no longer those people. This is who we are now. So yes, as you've said, now they have families. And so we have all these teenagers, these young adults running around who don't know anything about what it's like to be Klingon at all. And we get Worf entering in to show them who they are, which to me is really beautiful and full circle because he was raised on Earth away from Klingon and had to pretty much teach himself about his culture. And now he's getting to bring his culture to other people who were raised with Klingons, but so far away from the planet Klingon, so far away from the home world. Yeah. They have no concept of what it means to quote unquote be Klingon.
Yeah. It's very, you know what, I had a couple of thoughts about this. One, I was like, Worf is the least Klingon I know. He's like super tame. Like he doesn't do a bunch of the stuff that like, you know, when he was with his brother on his ship, he was like, damn, y'all are too Klingon even for me. Right. Yeah. So I was like, Worf may not be the right person to like teach them about their Klingonness, but he's also the perfect person because he never really got that for himself and he's always felt like an outsider. So now, you know, he's Worf is a third culture kid. He's grown up between Klingon culture and his looks. Like he looks too Klingon to pass as human, but he's too human for the Klingons' taste. So it's like he's had to make himself a third culture in which like he kind of resides, right? So this I thought was really, really nice. And when I saw him doing like Mokbara, like in the courtyard, which is the Klingon Tai Chi, you know, the other Klingons, especially the young ones, are like, what's that? What are you doing? Like, just all of it, like the whole kind of show is him exploring his own culture and then also like awakening the culture in these like youths who have no idea like about what this is for. So one of the first scenes we see is he gets really upset at this like young Klingon male who's probably like 16 or 18 or whatever, named Tok, and he's using this like spear as like a tiller to like till the soil to plant some like cabbages and stuff. And he was like, what are you doing? Like, this is a weapon of war. This is not for farming, right?
Yeah.
And you know, Tok is like, I don't know, like, listen, first of all, who are you to tell me how to use my like, I've got work to do. I don't have time for this. But also,
and he's not wrong about that. Who are you? He's
not wrong. He's
you
like,
literally just got here yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't even know you, man.
Cool your jets, buddy. Yeah. But you know, Worf does talk to Tok and he's like, can you leave whenever you want? Like, what are you even doing here? He's like, and Tok is like, why would I want to leave here? It's safe here. The Klingon war is still happening. Klingon is still a dangerous place. And so Worf sort of hears from like multiple other young that like they've been taught to believe that like the Klingon war is still happening. And so it's not safe for them to leave. And so they're like, okay, which kind of...
and they've also been taught that their parents, that there's a Romulan Klingon war that is actively happening. and that their parents were forced to fight in the war, whether they wanted to or not. So they all fled in the middle of the night and founded this colony here so they could be away from the pressure of being forced to fight, and they could live peacefully. So this is really, really genius way of controlling the kids, because they have zero desire to enter into this crazy, dangerous world where here it's safe. There's peace. They have everything that they need. There's supply ships that come and bring them stuff. They're happy. They've got their family. They've got their friends. Why would they want to go into this war-torn place outside of their little bubble? It was really 100%. A clever story, because how else are they going to explain Romulans and Klingons being together without explaining the history of Romulans or Klingons?
Yes. Well, it also, to me, like, brought about the issue of controlling anybody with like false narratives, right? Where it's like, you know, Tokath is the main Romulan in charge. He decides whatever these people get to learn, right? And so you tell them a bunch of lies, and people get all rallied behind it because that's their only source of information, right? And so it feels dangerously similar to like at the outside of the pandemic, how like different wings of politics were like disseminating information, and how some people thought like COVID was a hoax, it's not real, and it's not this and it's not that, because like that's the information they were hearing, and then other people were like, no, it is real, right? So it just, the issue is still prevalent today, like it's still happening now, which to me is like very scary.
I would say the difference here is that the Romulan prison guards and you know, Tokath and the Klingon, you know, elders were on the same page about the lie. And that's what makes the difference. Is because if everybody can get on the same page, at least everyone's moving in the same direction. Even if it's the wrong direction, we're moving in unity. So
that's like, true.
And that's why the kids were so well controlled. It's not like the Klingons were saying one thing and the Romulans were saying another thing. It's like they got together, they hatched this story, and they all said, we're going to stick to it. They all stuck to the story. And that's why the kids had no reason to doubt. No reason at all. If Worf had
because everybody's telling the same information. Yeah.
And then they're telling each other that, because why wouldn't they believe that? So the kids are telling the other kids, and the kids are telling each other, like, yeah, this is, you know, our home is so great. Our home is so wonderful. So Worf is, you know, chatting with Talk about that, and Talk storms off. And then out of nowhere, that young Klingon woman, Bail, that's not her name. Bael. Bael kind of runs into him and says the same thing, like, aren't you relieved? You're out of the war and all this stuff. And Worf is just like, what are you even talking about? And then her mom comes along and is like, I told you don't talk to that man. So she leaves, and Worf's homing beacon goes off at the perfect time when there are no witnesses around, conveniently. And
I love it. It's like, bleep, bloop, bleep, bloop. You're like, that was kind of loud, buddy.
Right? And I was like, what is that? And then when he goes to his quarters and he pulls something out of the wall, I was like, is that a phaser? Is that like a weapon? And to this day, I don't know what it was, but there was something in the wall that was perfect for him. And I thought he was going to hide his beacon there, but he didn't. He just put it back like in his sleeve. And I was like, what if it goes off again? You know, I was just so worried that he was going to be found out.
Hopefully he turned it to vibrate, so it would like at least not make a sound. Yeah. I did notice he did pull like that panel out, and he was kind of like pushing some buttons, which I got to say, major props to sound editing, because he was just pushing buttons that weren't there, and this beeping sound was still there. So I was like, this right here is good sound editing right off the top. Like I loved it.
It was so cool. And you and I were talking off camera, off mic, about how in this episode, like, no moment was wasted. And I feel like
nothing.
I feel like that, like, this is an example when his homing beacon goes off, when Bael walks away, it was like there wasn't even a pause. There was no moments in there that was just him staring, him looking, him thinking. It was like boom, 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 boom. Like the story just kept going. And so this is when Tokath comes to his quarters and tells him, you know, all the stuff about why he decided to stay. And he kind of threatens him. He's like, hey, my family's here. Like, don't mess up what we have here. Don't mess up the balance. And I was thinking at that time, it's too late. Him just showing up at all already is going to make the young people question, where did he come from?
Yeah.
Why if there's a war going on, are others coming? You know, just whatever. It's just putting stuff in their head.
Yeah, your presence, his Worf's presence in this prison camp is a
disruption.
A pebble on a still lake. It causes waves even just by being there. Like, even if he dropped in, made a quick scene and left, now you have questions that need answering, right? So it's very, very much
that, like, he starts to trigger. Even if he left, it would still have been a problem. I mean, not as big of a problem, but people would still be like, where did he come from? Why did he come? Is he like, there would just be questions. So it's kind of like, we need to start thinking about what to do now that this random Klingon has shown up into our group. Yep. But Tokath delivers a very professional threat, and Worf is like, I'm whatever. Like, he's just like, whatever, dude. So he ends up pulling that thing out the wall and somehow turning it into an improvised explosion. MacGyvering that bad boy.
I love that, like, a simple little cube in a wall can be made into an explosion, which tells me that we need to get, like, boned up on our, like, Star Trek devices, because if we're ever in some sort of situation like this, we can just, like, beep boop, like my AirPods, and make them explode.
Make them explode in the window, which makes a hole big enough for a whole body to walk through or something.
Yeah, it feels very Simpson-y, and I've brought this up before, where it feels like The Simpsons, where, like, you know, they start off with, like, a gasoline truck that, like, tips over and explodes, and then like more and more simple things explode, where, like, a little kid is riding a tricycle and bumps into a tree and tips over, and the tricycle explodes. And then at one point, like, I think it's like a leaf falls off the tree, and when it touches, like, the ground, it explodes. Like, it just becomes a whole explosion. And so, and I love that a kid riding a tricycle, like, explodes in The Simpsons. But it really does feel like literally anything could be an explosive device in the right hands. In the Star Trek world.
I thought you were gonna say there's like safety code violations in the building of this housing structure. But no, I like that instead. Like, yeah, you can just take something out, hit a few buttons, throw it into some containers, and it explodes. And that's exactly what happens.
Slap a mullet wig on me, and like a little, like, vest, and like an eraser, and like a ballpoint pen, and I can make anything explode in my mind in Star Trek. Yeah. It's MacGyver meets Star Trek.
Yes. And so Worf escapes. Like, he legitimately escapes this, albeit unwell guarded prison, and jumps the fence, because it's not a prison anymore. Now it's just like a home.
A colony. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a colony. So he scales the freaking wall, and he's running.
Sure does.
Through this crazy jungle with the brain snakes and all the stuff, and he's just running. And he almost makes it to the freighter. Like, he can see the freighter through the clearing when Tok jumps him and is trying to, like, capture him. He doesn't even know what's going on. He just knows the Klingon's trying to escape, and he tries to catch him. And Worf tussles with him, and then he's about to punch him in the face, and he realizes, oh, it's just a kid. I mean, we're saying kid, but these actors are actually, like, in their 20s. But they seem like they're 15. Like, they seem 18, extremely young. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, I'm not just gonna hit this, like, kid. And that minute of hesitation was enough time for the Romulans to catch up with him with their disruptors. The freighter guy has already scurried off and flown away.
He's long gone.
He's pieced out. And you're like, dang it, Worf literally almost escaped. I was so impressed by that escape, by the way. I was like, where's he gonna go? Oh my gosh, he almost made it. I was so impressed. Like,
right? I was like, how far are you gonna run in the jungle? You're only like 8 seconds ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, but he could have totally made it. Like,
but you know what, with the freighter, then it was like, aha, here's your way out. And then, of course, the Uridian Shrek was like, oh, are you in trouble? Later. Beep. Like, there goes his ship. And you're like, oh, all right. Cool. You're on your own, buddy. Which, I mean, that's not surprising about the Uridian, because he was sketchy AF anyway.
He told him ahead of time, like, be there when this beacon goes off. I will wait for 1 hour or whatever he said.
Or else, yeah.
And then I will be leaving. And I will leave you. Like, he already told him. So when he runs away, it was like, he did tell you he was going to do that. We're not expecting loyalty here. And plus, he still didn't even get paid. So the only reason he stayed for the hour was to make sure he got that other half.
Right?
Rather him not get it than him get imprisoned, right? So
yeah, no, I'd rather be broke than imprisoned. Absolutely. Now they do bring him back, and they put a tracking chip in his neck, and they're like, you're free to wander around inside, but you can't leave. And Worf is like, I'll never get used to it here. I'll never be one of you, or whatever he says. And off he goes this is when he starts practicing his mukbara, the Tai Chi. And the others are kind of drawn to him. And he's like, the form clears the mind and like centers the body and all this. And I think that it's really cool to see him finding his peace.
Yeah.
You know, one of the tools
when he's freaking stressed.
Yes. Like, one of the tools that we struggle with as humans is like reaching for the appropriate tools when we get stressed or upset. And I think that this is great. Like, Worf has clearly practiced the mukbara so much, and he was like teaching it on the Enterprise. Like, he's an expert in it, let's call him. And so he's stressed, and he immediately reaches for one of his tools. And I was like, this is really healthy right here. And it's also really beautiful to see, you know, this whole kind of group of youths be like, what is that? And they immediately start trying to like
imitating
emulate what he's doing.
Yeah.
I was
Doesn't
like,
that kind of make you want to do it too? Like when you see all these kids being like, ooh, that makes me want to be like, well, I want to try.
Let me tell you, I immediately opened up a new tab on my computer and looked at the local botanical garden near where I live. Pre-pandemic used to do yoga in the garden and then an hour of like Tai Chi in the garden, like as well, like after.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked it up and I was like, I am going to sign up for a class because I want to try it. Like it looks, I mean, it's all taken from the principles of Tai Chi, which is all very like yoga-esque and like mind-body connection and all that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this just looks so cool.
It looks so
I want to do it.
Calming and relaxing.
It looks very calming. It does. I really want to try it. But Toke is like, what are you doing? You know? And so Worf is like, you're young. You don't know. Like, join us. I will teach you. But Toke is very, very, I call him Romulanified. Like, he is very like, this is our life. You've come to disrupt it. Like, these are my overlords. Like, we're fine with this life. Like, you're coming up and you're disrupting stuff. And this is where, like, Worf is like, wow, you guys know nothing about your culture. And he's got like a fireside chat happening with the kids afterward, telling the story of like Kahless the Unforgettable and like, you know, some of the like Toke is like
campfire scene. He's just teaching them their stories. And when Tok comes along and is all mad about it, it's like, that's not possible. That didn't happen. All this stuff. He's just like, these are our stories. This teaches us who we are. This is how we find our identity. And it's at that moment when LaCour comes out and is like, all right, kids, break it up. Everybody go to bed. Because he's being reminded of his story and his past, which he has tried so hard. They've been in this camp for 23 years. He has tried so hard to bury everything about being Klingon because of the shame, because of the intense shame of being a prisoner, not allowed to die and not allowed to go home. That he's tried really hard to just forget about all of this. So here comes Worf, and he's bringing it all back up, and he's stirring it up, and he's passing it on to the kids who've never heard these stories that little Klingon children hear from birth. They've never heard them. They've heard the songs, but they don't know what the songs are about. Like, yeah, I could see this being really threatening to their way of life, but also just really uncomfortable, right? For LaCour to be like, oh, to see himself in Worf.
Yes.
Like, that was me, but that person is dead.
Yeah.
And now what do we do? We have kids, and what do we do with that? Because they also can't go home, you know?
Yeah, they really can't. And this is, I think, where it starts to be like the unlocking portion of the story. That's like Worf is starting to unlock something, you know, deep and asleep in like these kids. Like these kids had never accessed like their really Klingon side and like their warrior stories and their history and everything, right? Like, because the older Klingons who were captured, like they're like, we're basically no longer Klingon. Like,
right.
You know, we live by our code of honor, and it's, we're not, we have no honor. We have no anything. Like, this is just who we are now. And so Worf wants to go on a hunt, and Toke is like, listen, dude.
Wait, before that, the reason why the hunt happened, which was so, again, really cool, is that the kids, I keep calling them kids, the youngsters, they're all playing in the courtyard.
Spoken like an old person.
Right? And I could not take any notes without feeling like an old person this entire episode, because I kept saying like the kids, and I'm like, girl, they're like 20, but they don't seem like 20 because they're so naive. They seem
they're
really
very
young.
So
the kids are out there playing, and they're playing with like this colorful hula hoop and these sticks. And so they're like throwing the hula hoop and trying to land it on the sticks or whatever. And so Tok is like, you know, it's his turn, and he's like, woo, this is fun or whatever. And while he's playing, Worf sees them, and he comes out and he grabs one of the spikes. And then as Tok rolls the hula hoop, he throws the spike through the hoop. And then he says something. I don't remember what he said, like something like kaplop.
He says kerploff.
Okay.
I wrote it down. I was like, because he kind of went Yahtzee, but he went kerploff. Yes,
exactly.
Like, I win.
So, exactly. Like, okay. So he said Klingon Yahtzee. And Tok was like, that is not how this game is played. Like, he was so upset. Like, you're messing up the game, dude. You don't even know how this is played.
Yeah.
And then Worf is like, this isn't a game. This is to refine your reflexes when hunting. And he's just like, what are you talking about hunting? We have replicators. And I was like, I hear you on that one. Because we sure do. We sure do. Like, to this, like right now where we don't have replicators,
I do not feel the need
stores.
To skin and clean an animal.
No. I'm a city girl, not a farm girl for a reason. I have friends who love that life. And I just, God bless them. When they come here, we visit together. But
you know me, like I'm all about like the wilderness and like nature, which I love. But you know what I will do is I'll bring a sandwich that I got from stuff from the store to make the sandwich.
I mean, that's the purpose of the store. I'm so grateful that we don't live in those societies, but that's
and agrarians.
Yeah, he's like, we have replicators. We don't hunt. And I'm like, But Worf is like, that's not the point, which of course is not the point of hunting anymore. Like it's been a long time since hunting has been the only source of sustenance. It's not about that. So he's like, it's about being a warrior and all this other stuff. And he's like, you know what? I think you're old enough. You need to go on the hunt, because it's like a rite of passage that I guess they do with little kids. But he's like, you're tough, you're strong. Like, let's go on this hunt. And then Talk is like, they don't want to let you go on a hunt. Are you crazy? They don't even want you going out of the compound. Like, you're not supposed to go anywhere. I'm supposed to be watching you. I'm supposed to be your bodyguard,
Yeah.
And Worf is like, I think they'll let me go. Like, they'll let me go. It's fine. So he goes to talk to Torath and Lakor, who are, like the head of everything, to be like, I want to take the boy on the ritual hunt. And Tokath dismisses it outright. This is not, and here is where I think we start. This scene is where we start to see the divide. So before we start to see the unlocking, this is where we start to see the divide. Because even though they've combined into one community, there are still two cultures living in this community. And one of these cultures is still oppressed by the other culture. Like, even though we're all quote unquote equal, we're not. We're still not, because Tokath is still in charge. The Romulans are still in charge. So when the Klingons want to express any Klingoniness, then it's like smashed out of them. That's not allowed. Like, your culture's here, but it's not allowed to exist. So this is where we start to see that divide where Worf is like, I want to take him on the hunt. And Lakor is like, I don't know. And then Torath is like, what? Are you crazy?
You can't be serious.
We're not doing that. We're not doing that. No, And then
By the way, I love how sassy you made him. We're not doing that. No.
Absolutely not. Negative. Yeah, that's Tokath. And
he is a sassy Romulan. Okay.
But then Worf is like, I give you my word that, I will just go on this hunt and come back. I'm not going to try to escape. I'm not going to try to hurt anybody. Like, I just want him to have this experience. Yeah. And Torath doesn't believe that for a hot second. And Lakor is just like, he gave you his word as a warrior. And that means something to us. Again, there's that cultural divide where he's like, your promise doesn't mean anything to me as a Romulan. And as a Klingon, he's like, but it was his promise. Like, it means everything. And he was like, look, 23 years ago, I gave you my word as a warrior that I would not escape. Have I ever done anything to make you doubt that word? And I won't, because I gave my promise. And it just like gives me chills thinking about it. Like, those are the parts of the Klingon culture that I really admire and respect, is the integrity. Like, to be like, what I said, and I'm going to do that. Right. And Tokath is just such a little pill about all of this. He's like, oh, well, fine. He's your responsibility. And, his word. Okay. I don't know. He just is kind of like taunting and not really believing it, but he's like, whatever, let him go. But they go and it's great.
They go on this great hunt. This is like where Tok really is like, I am a Klingon. Like, he comes back all Klingonified, right? Yes. He comes back hard Klingonified. I smell the prey. I can feel it in my nostrils. My heart is pounding. I'm alive.
Yeah. He literally came to life.
Okay. So they come back from the hunt where, everybody's sitting around for dinner, and Tokath is like, where's your Klingon now? Right? Like, are you sure he's coming back?
He gave you his word, haha.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Like, total pill behavior. But girl, Tok comes in, and suddenly Tok is Xena warrior princess. He's got like a skinned and clean lamb that he like smacks on the table where Tokath is eating. And Tokath is like, get this shit off my table. He's like, no, a Klingon does not kill an animal if you don't plan to eat every part of it. Rah, right? And he comes back and he starts singing the Klingon songs. And he's like, the blood running through my veins. Like, he is like, this is quite the conversion.
Yes.
It was like, so all it took was for Tok to go on a hunt. And all of a sudden he's all the way, and of course this whole time, like, Tokath is like, okay, now I'm seeing a major problem with Worf being here. And Worf is kind of looking at him like, I told you, see, right? So they're kind of looking at each other across the room. So, or I'm sorry, I've been saying his name wrong. Torath. Torath is like, okay, Worf, maybe we should have just let you escape. because now you're causing more of a problem by just being here because you're awakening all this stuff that we don't want awakened in our prisoners, right? And it really does become more and more clear. We haven't built a home for them. We built a prison for them and oppressed their stories and their culture and their way of life. And now they're like awakening in that and learning to like embrace this and be like, wow, this is like who I am. This is amazing, right? So that's when Torth is like, live like us or I got to put you to death. And Worf is like, cool. Kill me. It'll be an honorable death and I'll be a martyr, which is unique. You can't kill a martyr. You can't because the message is so much more powerful dead than alive.
Yeah.
And that's,
you were saying it right. It is Tokath. You were saying it right.
Is it? Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. You can't kill a martyr. It's too little too late. And Tokath didn't have a problem with it until, I mean, he did have a problem with it. He was getting nervous, but it was when he looked over and saw his daughter, who we discover is actually part Romulan, part Klingon. She looks Klingon, but she's got pointy ears. Yep. And so when she starts singing the song, that's when he's like, all right, like enough of this, because
everybody lights out.
Exactly.
Lights out. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, he threatens Worf, and Worf is just like, that's fine. It'll be an honorable death. I'm okay with that. And he's just like,
damn it.
Right, because this is his ace in the hole. Like, he couldn't use that weapon against the original Klingons that he had captured because they wanted to die. So killing them would give up his power. So he said, I'm going to keep you alive, mahaha, and, trade your lives. But then the Klingon High Command was like, we don't want them. Like, they can't be alive because they're warriors. They would have killed themselves. So they were useless to him. So he had no really control over them.
Had nothing at all.
And now here with Worf, he's pulling his ace card, which is, I will kill you if you don't conform. To which Worf says, sounds good to me. What time do you want to do it? Right? Like,
can I get a quick sandwich first before? Yeah. Okay.
He says it will be an honorable death and it will show the young people what it means to be Klingon even better than anything else I've done so far. So let's do it. And it's like, Tokath, you're between a rock and a hard place. Like, you don't have control over this Klingon. You've controlled every other Klingon in this camp. And I'm not making him the bad guy because the elder Klingons are just as culpable for making these kids brainwashed and ignorant.
Yes. Yeah.
But that power is gone now. So he's like, all right, let's do it. Let's do it in an hour or whatever. Like, it's like, they set the time. They're like, fine, I'm going to kill you. Cause like, you're disrupting my actual family. And I can't have this.
I can't have that. I can't have that at all.
They put him in front of the firing squad. And actually before that, the daughter comes to try to like help him escape. But he's like, no, I'm a Klingon. I'm not going to escape. I'm going to stay here and die like a Klingon. Yes. And you're just like, wow.
I do love that he says like, he's like, I may be killed, but I won't be defeated. And I was like, wow, see, that's the difference.
Such a good line.
In like mindset, right? Yeah. It's like, sure, I may die, but I'm not going to be defeated. And I was like, that's the mindset right there of like a warrior in a really poetic and beautiful way, because you think of warrior mindset and you're like, kill, or rah, or whatever.
But sometimes it's die.
Sometimes it's die, and sometimes that's okay. Like, it's not preferable, but like my message won't die. And I know like he is being put to death, and he does have this whole speech where he's like, I'm being put to death because I brought dangerous knowledge to the young Klingons, and that knowledge is a virus. It spreads, and like once you accept fact as truth, then you can't go back to like the way that they were living. Yeah. And I love that Biela's like, I don't want you to die, and they kiss and stuff, and he's like, I never thought I could love a Romulan. And I was like, first of all, you've had like 3 interactions with this girl. Calm down, Worf. Like,
well, she was the one who brought it up. She was all like, I know you care for me. You speak of death, but what about love? Tell me you have love in your heart and all this stuff. And she's the one who starts with, but I love you, Worf. And he's like, I love you too. And I was like, I wrote in my notes, it's been 3 days, boo. What are y'all doing?
Thank you.
What are y'all doing?
Thank you.
I get it's an intense situation, which can accelerate feelings, but it's been 3 days. Like,
it sure can. It sure can. Like, listen, I personally, every time I've ever been in love, it did hit really fast, but by fast, it's like a couple of weeks, not 3 interactions that you have. And 2 of them were like watched over by your parents. Where you're just exchanging some pleasantries. It feels a little Downton Abbey-esque to me. And I know that sounds really weird, putting Downton Abbey in a Romulan war camp on Star Trek, but like that's how like people would get married there. They would have like a handful of interactions all around the family, and then the man would be like, so you seem like you'd be a good fit, will you marry me? And she's like, okay. And then they get married, and that's it. And it's like, huh? No wonder there was so many unhappy marriages and all that, because even an intense situation like this like does accelerate feelings. Like, there's always a lot of like whenever you have war, you always also see a huge spike in like marriages because people are like, our lives could end at any moment. What are we waiting for? You know, and you get swept up in the emotion. But then if these people who go off to war come back from war and then they have to live like a regular, non-accelerated, exciting feeling kind of life, then it's like you've really come down hard. You really have. Like,
I've made a huge mistake.
Absolutely. A huge mistake.
So I guess they're in love. Okay, whatever. So they make out and she leaves. And it's funny that he's like, I never thought I would love a Romulan, but like 99% of her looks completely Klingon. So you don't even know she's Romulan except for pointy ears. If you hadn't seen those, you'd have no idea. But she does make a really good point where she's just like, you know, she's like, I want to take you away, Worf, you know, or why can't you stay here and be with me because we're in love or whatever? Why can't you just live here and be happy? And then he was like, if I had a choice, I'd take you with me instead. And she goes, well, based on your reaction to me when you first saw my ears, I would not be accepted on the Klingon homeworld. Like, no Klingons would have me because I'm part Romulan, which I was like, that is a really good point. Like his reaction, and he's like the most like accepting of the Klingon. So if his reaction was horrified and disgusted, like you'd probably be killed on the spot by some other Klingon, right? So she has a really good point that she's not safe in the world just by from her DNA and how she looks.
I know.
But then he turns around and says, well, I can't stay here because none of these Klingons will accept me, right? He's too Klingon for these Klingons, and she's not Klingon enough for the others, and it's just like a sticky situation.
And too Klingon for the Romulans,
But in any case, that's what happens. He agrees to die. He's not going to run away. And next thing you know, we're in the square doing the execution, and the whole village has turned out. So all 30 of them are like hanging out.
I know. It was like all 14 of the people are milling around, right?
Milling around, yeah.
They're just milling around kind of nervously. And Worf does this death speech where it's like, I am being put to death because I brought this dangerous knowledge to the young Klingons. And so, you know, it's what it is. Like, but even after I die, like the truth of the matter will spread. These kids are now awakened to their like this side of them that they didn't know. And they're going to want to explore it more because they were really embracing the fuck out of it like 20 minutes ago when we were singing songs over the Shorn Lamb, you know? So, you know, that's when Toke comes in and he's like, stop this. And he's in full blown Klingon armor. And he's got the spear that he was using for tilling. And there isn't an ounce of like earth on that thing. It's all clean and shiny and nothing. He is ready. And he's like, if you kill me, if you kill him,
dope. He looks so good.
Yeah. He looks so great. He's like, if you kill Worf, you'll have to kill me too. And then I wrote in my notes, speech, the day is saved. Because one Klingon after another was like, and you'll have to kill me too, and me too, and me too. And then Bael comes in and she's like, me too. And that's when Tokath is like, Bael, and you could see like his little disruptors like getting shakier and shakier,
but he still has it up.
Over, boo.
He's still holding his ground.
It's shaking, over.
And then his wife comes up and just puts his hand down like, honey, Tokath, come on.
It's like, not happening.
You're not going to shoot our daughter in the face.
No.
We've already lost this battle. The entire colony at this point is standing in front of these 3 disruptors. Let's just like, we have
call it what it is.
And then she makes a great speech where she says, you know, we were so focused on not going back to our homeworld because we didn't want to bring dishonor to our families that we didn't for once stop to think about what we were doing to our families here since we created new families. Because 23 years ago, they just decided to stay. But now 23 years later, they've got a whole bunch of people populating this area. So now, you know, it's a different reality they hadn't thought of. So she's like, this prison is our prison, right? The Romulans and the Elders, they all agreed to stay. This is not the kids' prison. They never agreed to this life. So they were like, we can't keep them here forever, which actually was a good point because how long were they going to stay? You know, they weren't going to be able to stay forever. They would need some new genes in the gene pool at some point. So Worf is like, he turns to all the kids and he's like, listen, youngsters, your parents made this huge sacrifice of never going home to be here. So now they're making another sacrifice of letting you leave to never return, probably. Yeah. So we have to honor them by never, ever speaking of this place.
Yes.
Never tell anyone. Yes. It doesn't exist. And he cooks up this story about they crashed in some freighter in some nearby Romulan homeworld like 4 years ago, and they're now being delivered.
These are the survivors.
Back. These are the survivors. Yeah. Like, this is the story we're going to tell. And you know, that's it. Next thing you know, they're being beamed aboard. Like the Romulan supply ship comes and picks everybody up. Tokath explains everything to them. They go and drop everybody off at the Enterprise. And Worf is met in the transporter room by Picard and tells Picard, like, there was nobody at Khitomer. It was totally, like, there was no prison camp. Everyone died. But there was a ship that crashed 4 years ago, and these are the survivors of that ship. Yes. And Picard looks at him and goes, I understand. And I was
loved that. It was such a knowing look where it's like, this is why I love Picard so much too, because he doesn't need to pry to know that something is up. And if Worf wants to say that nothing happened, then nothing happened. Wink, wink.
And that will be the official report.
That will be the official report. And like, if you want to have a cup of Klingon poison tea, you know, together and talk about this at some point, like, my door is always open for you, but nothing happened. Okay. Nothing happened then. Then nothing happened.
Yeah.
And I love it. And I do love Picard saying, I understand. I was like, oh, it's so good. And like, off they go. So in that way, like, the original population of the survivors of Khitomer still can live in this prison camp because they can't go back. But now these young Klingons have a story that they can take back to Klingon homeworld and not be seen as like outcasts, right? Where it's like, we were on this like outpost and we were on a ship and it crashed and we're survivors. We survived there for a couple of years, the end. So now there's no like messy strings attached of like questions of like, who are you? Who are your parents? Where'd you come from? Khitomer, survival.
Yeah. All
camp? That. Okay. Dishonor, right? Like they've been washed clean and they have this whole fresh story they can take and then go like create a life, which I think is really lovely for Worf to like launch a whole new like generation of Klingons, which is really, really cool because he really missed out on a lot of that. Like, thank you, Rashenkos, for raising him.
Yeah.
Obviously, he wouldn't have survived without them, but he also now gets to like really kind of lean into his Klingon side. And I think it's so cool. Also, totally random side note, the hair that Worf starts to wear from this episode going forward, where he's got the long hair, which is sort of like that leather cord tying his hair back. It looks so freaking cool.
It looks great.
So cool. Like it looks
very masculine and like dapper. Something about it looks just very neat and clean and professional or something to me.
Yes, but it's all still very kind of like,
it's almost like a pirate. something about
I was going to say there's a like roughness about it because usually, you know, you don't see like men with long hair aboard the Enterprise, but it's like tied back and it's got this leather cord, so it's got like a rustic, outdoorsy.
It's kind of like a Jason Momoa look. Like,
it really is.
Yeah, it's like a big burly guy with long hair, but the hair is like pulled back, but it's still a little messy and rough, but it's like contained. But it's like neat.
Yeah.
So it's something about that perception of like this contained power or something in this frame that you're just like, okay.
Oh, 100%. I love that. I know I've just spent 5 minutes talking about Worf's hair, but that does look really cool. And then I've noticed in like future episodes, he kind of keeps it that way. And when we think back to season 1 and 2 Worf that had like the crazy
short bob.
What the fuck were they doing? I mean, I know they were trying their best, but my God.
It's like so all ugly. The extra hair on Worf they took and put on Deanna Troi. Because you remember she had that big space cheerleader thing where it was like this big, like, man. But at the time, I'm sure it was fine because it was like the 80s, 90s. So
yeah. It was also like,
it probably
was
looked
whatever.
Very progressive and futuristic at the time.
It did, but my God, when I see season 1 pictures of Worf, I'm like, what the fuck? Anyway, so no, this is so bad.
It just barely covers the back of his towel with that little. Yes. Like when getting a haircut was a huge mistake. That's what that was.
Maybe what I'll do as we start to wrap, because we're more than halfway through season 6 and then there's just season 7 left. So we're almost done, which is amazing. Crazy. And it's also kind of sad because you're like, no, I don't want this journey dead. But maybe I'll do like the 10-year challenge or whatever. Even though it was only 7 years, you know, where it's like babyface Riker to like hot Riker and like Worf with the fucking ugly bob to like Worf with his cool ass hair now. Like, you know, and Troi with the space cheerleader outfit. My God, to like professional
Troi
like,
in her like uniform looking amazing.
And then it would be Data to Data. The only change is just his uniform. He just gets a cool collar. That's it. Like on his uniform. Anyway, final thoughts on this episode.
My final thoughts were, I really like this episode. It feels like so many different things were happening that I'm surprised that everything fit into a 45-minute section. And I really think it is because there was no wasted minutes and no wasted seconds. It felt like a lot was going on.
I think 100% I agree with you. And I think that at this point, the show is such a well-polished and well-oiled machine that there is a real economy of storytelling now where every single shot means something and is there for a purpose to move the story, right? Whereas like we don't just have like random, 30-second clips of like some guy just walking down the hallway just to like fill the story, like which makes it actually harder for us to review the episodes because you watch a 20-second scene and there's like 10 minutes of notes you need to write because so much has happened in those 20 seconds. But it's also a really good problem to have.
This was like the opposite of Aquiel, right? I know we keep bringing that back to our lowest point so far, but like that episode, we had a full 10 minutes of her doing her diary entries. It was like an excess of things that didn't have anything to do with anything. And this is like every moment is a thing. Like the campfire stories were there for a reason.
Yeah.
He's reigniting their passion.
The little device in the wall was there for a reason. Yeah.
Like everything, even the courtyard, that was their only set. But every time they came into the courtyard, it looked totally different and it had a different function.
They shot like different angles of it. They really,
they had like the garden to show the spear being used wrong. Then they had the garden again to show the hula hoops being used wrong. Then they had the Tai Chi going on to explain Tai Chi. Then they had the firing squad in that same area. They had the canisters there so the bomb could go off in that area. I mean, like, it was this one set, but even that, every time they showed it, it served a function that was totally separate from the last time we saw this exact same area, which was
100%. Thinking back to Aquiel, if hell exists and I'm sent to hell, I would just be doomed. Like how like I love Greek mythology and they talk about like how in the underworld like Sisyphus had to like push the boulder up the hill forever because it would like you almost get to the top and it would roll back down and you have to start all over again. So if I were ever sent to hell and like doomed to like eternal pain, it would just be me watching Aquiel's freaking personal logs over and over again. Like that would be the worst.
Him again today.
It was so scary. Shut up, Aquiel. Who cares about you? Anyway, so that's Klingon culture in a nutshell.
It was great. This episode was great. This episode was great.
It was super great. I feel like those are kind of our final thoughts. Like it fulfills backstory. It gives us backstory that we didn't even know we needed. It gives Worf more purpose to like teach the young Klingons the way of life. Like it's a good episode. I really like it a lot.
Worf is fantastic in this. Like
he's so great.
I love seeing him be a full and complete person and not just like the person who shoots people who come onto the bridge.
Yeah,
and that's it. And that's all he does. It's like here he's got thoughts. Like,
this is
values.
We're seeing like the Charmin side of Worf, like the softer, supple side of Worf, where also Michael Dorn, major props to him because he is both like soft-spoken and also forceful and like deliberate, but really like, I mean, he kind of takes like, he laughs, he almost cries. Like there's a depth to him that we don't see, certainly not in the early seasons where like him and Tasha Yar were just like intruders shoot, extruders shoot, like everything was shoot, right? Like everything.
Offtruders shoot.
Yeah. So this was awesome. I wish they would have made that onesie into like two pieces, but other than that, like I'm like, Worf, don't put the uniform back on. You look amazing in all black. Let's make everybody wear all black. Everybody would look cool in all black. Anyway, on that note, you guys, thank you so much for nerding out with us. Next week, we're talking season 6, episode 18, Starship Mine. That one is a total banger. Can't wait to break it down. We'll catch you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.